Legend of Mana, the first spin-off Mana series or Seiken Densetsu series developed for the PS1. A unique kind of game that tried to explore various new things that weren't common back in the day, planting new places to explore, a more focused story on the characters around the player, several types of weapons to choose from, or even craft them over the two different workshops, and a lot more things that the game has to offer. As this is one of my personal favorite childhood games before, I wanted to explore the game more thoroughly, especially considering there's the upcoming HD remaster of the game. As much as I'm excited about it, I'm a bit skeptical in a way, to which I'll be talking about it later on. This is K1PM, and today I'll be doing a full review of Legend of Mana. I'll be talking more in depth about the game, and pointing out the pros and cons of it. The game was developed and published by Squaresoft on July 15, 1999. Soon after, it followed up on the NA version a bit later on during June 6, 2000. 3 months later after the release of PS2. Legend of Mana has always been one of my favorite games before. The amount of fun I had playing the game alongside with my brother was a memorable thing for me growing up. Although, the only difference now is that I'm no longer sticking with the two-player character. Mana series does tend to have a multiplayer mechanic within their games after all, and that's actually a plus for me, especially considering in an RPG kind of setting. But before I move on to that portion, I'd like to talk more about the plot and story first, especially since it's a bit of a surprise for me going to that part. And yes, I did spend a lot of time exploring the game for weeks about it, especially how the game kinda gave me the soft lock twice. I have to end up creating 3 separate saves now because of this. Thanks for giving me a real reason why I end up playing the game for this long, although I did enjoy it to be fair. The plot of the story is actually a bit weird at the first glance. For an RPG game that doesn't have a main character's own story, it kinda sounds a bit bland in a way, but instead focusing more on the lives and the story of other different characters in the game. Whether it'll be accompanying a merchant's venture towards riches, from gathering key ingredients or scamming other people, helping out a Jumi Knight in search for someone that he's supposed to look out for, or even learning Dudbear language just to sell a few lamps in order to help out this lover guy on his very own quest for love, while still having a few interesting story arcs in between, like the part where it involves the race of Jumi and the hunters, and the part where the main character went to the underworld in order to have a deal with the ruler there, as well as each of the story comes with each of their own endings for that chapter, totaling up to 68, which is actually quite a lot back then. But those aren't exactly an ending of a game. There's still only one ending available that a player could get throughout the whole game. That's after beating the final boss in the game, which can be challenging in a way. Depending on the amount of stages that a player places in the map, the closer the player reaches at the end part of the game, the last quest being called as the Legend of Mana, which is actually pretty much alright. It's not as good as to compare to the other stories in the game, but I guess it's okay. I've enjoyed some of the stories in the game, but some of them weren't exactly that good, such as the Mana Orchard story. I just plant a few seeds and harvest them after a few days later. Then I got an ending from it, and that's it. The added feature on the farming side was actually alright to have, but the story itself could have used a lot more details on it. Like, they have this kind of content that could have at least improved the character's development with it, but sadly that's not the case. It's the same exact feeling I had with these tutorials on the crafting side of things, and also that monster trainer tutorial and that Golem Mancy workshop. It kind of felt really exaggerated that every quest has an ending of it, in my opinion. I mean, it's alright to have it, but it just feels a bit too short. Although, the main story arc is actually really decent. They put a lot of effort into it that I really enjoy. The game became more of a choose-your-own kind of adventure along the way. It lets the player explore more about the world and encounter several different quests around the map. While after a single quest is done, you could actually talk to this little cactus for it to write on the diary, which is actually really cute and interesting to read what it wrote. I enjoy these kind of ideas they have. Although, there's a huge problem that comes with it. Some of the quests can be really confusing to finish in a way how bad the directions are given to me in a quest. Not even the diary or the event list over here is any help. It's a bit useless as it only shows the description of the quest and not a proper log of what part of the quest are already done. Now, when it comes to the writing on each story of a quest, however, unfortunately, it's not that well polished. For a game that prioritizes more on the variety of quests that can be changed depending on the player's decision and partner they're accompanied with, there were times that the story and the quest became a bit too linear in a way. Like, I can't bring Elazul to this quest since it ends up conflicting within this story, or how the dialogues in the game aren't in order. Like when Sotheby has this certain dialogue, even though the ones he refers to isn't here yet, since I didn't do the Hunting Ducati first before this one, and especially how Esmeralda didn't recognize me as her knight, even though that was just a few days ago in the game. Like, come on Esmeralda, did you suddenly forget who I am? Aren't you even surprised how I even get here? This what makes a game felt like my main character is a ghost or something, sometimes. Kinda like the quest with Summer Lovin'. I kinda felt like a ghost while these two lovers ends up arguing. I just stand there and watch them throughout it all. No dialogues I could do to change their narrative in a way. It just feels something lacking in there. Especially I don't get the connection of beating the boss ends up progressing in the story. Although to be fair, there were a lot of scenes where my partner ends up creating or changing the dialogues within the story a bit. I know what you might be thinking. That's just a minor thing when you think about it, right? But there's this one case that ends up soft-locking me in the game. When I end up rejecting to help out Elazul at the start and follow the series of different quests around the map until I reach and finish to this part, I can no longer unlock the other important stages in the game. Since I didn't manage to do one of the earlier quests in the game first, I could just go back to Elazul and do the quest, right? But I can't since I've already finished the quest, the Looking Glass Tower. Elazul's first quest can't be started. It's not available for some reason. And yes, I've played the game for weeks just to get soft locked from it. I even checked out several guides online about it, but to no avail. I had to redo the whole thing all over again because of this. But yeah, I guess I'd let this slide for now, since I didn't manage to find other people having the same kind of problem I have. Perhaps it might be a glitch or something. Then a couple of hours later, I end up getting soft lock in the game again, on a different reason. When I'm almost near at the end part of the game, this event called the Cage of Dreams happened. It follows up to this section of the story on the workshop. Before I end up proceeding to this part of the game, I had to do the other quest first before this one, specifically the one that unlocks the Golem workshop area of the game. Because of that quest getting finished, it ends up removing the only quest available to reach the final events of the game. The guys who are at the workshop a while ago are already gone. I'm not sure how to bring them back anymore. Thanks game for ruining my save twice. Now I had to make another entire new game again for the third time. And I still haven't reached the new game plus mode yet. This is the reason why I end up uploading this video really late already. When it comes to the gameplay itself, it's a bit of a mixed feeling for me. I actually like the ton of weapons, skills, and even magic that the game has to offer. I can also do crafting of equipments on the Forge workshop, and over here for the instruments to cast magic, or how skills can be acquired depending on the type of weapons or skills that are equipped. They even go so far as to adding a pet monster system in the game, catching them in their egg form and then raising them to fight alongside later on, as well as having a mechanic of creating your very own golem in the game, although it's a bit complicated in a way, but nonetheless it's there to spice things up. It gives that sense of progression and the feeling of the game that I could improve through a lot of different ways. This what makes the replayability enjoyable. As well as I love the Mana series for its multiplayer game function. It's actually a huge plus for me that it works really good in an RPG game. There's even an arena mode where both of the players fight it out there, to which I guess it's an alright thing. Although there are some mechanics in the game that can be a bit of a letdown. like how I can spam my attacks to do a stun lock towards the enemy, or how using specials takes a really long time to the point that the enemy runs away from him. The spells are fine with me, but the specials, however, that thing bothers me about it, as I end up using them most of the time, usually in a counter kind of method against a boss, or as a means of evading enemy specials that I can abuse. Hopefully they'll work this out on the HD Remastered of the game. However, the difficulty setting for the game is too easy. I mean, I appreciate the game is forgiving. In a way, if a party member passes out, its HP starts to refill over time until it's ready again. Or how forgiving the game can just restart the fight when the whole party member loses. But the main problem for me here is how weak the enemies are. Throughout my 3 playthrough of the game, I never equip any armor nor a stronger weapon. I only changed to a different kind of weapon for the different kind of styles to use. But I didn't prioritize in creating the strongest kind of equipments to use on. And still, the game feels like a breeze throughout it all. I didn't even try to farm in the game. I just do any of the available quests in the game and that's it. It really needs adjustments. I know that the game has a harder difficulty on the New Game Plus, but that's already on the New Game Plus. The first New Game should have been balanced in the first place. Not to mention how fixed the enemies can be stationed on the level design of the game, or how the enemy drops can be an annoying thing, as not every enemy drops an XP that you could get. Wish they could at least still have an XP drop on every enemy. Although I really enjoyed catching different monsters in the game, and play some different instruments to attract spirits. It adds a bit of a short respite moments in the game, something different to do for a change. The game's overall art design is actually amazing to see. It's one of the best pixel art I've seen on the older games before. How vibrant and detailed the designs within each levels of the game, and how well made the characters' designs are. The amount of variety that the game has what makes the game an exciting world to explore on, from visiting different towns and natural places to the different kinds of ruins and the underworld itself. I love how they put a lot of thought and effort on the whole design of the game. This what astonishes me, how lively the overall design can be. Although there were a few bosses in the game that just seem a bit too stiff, or how some of the bosses just seem a bit of a reskin from the other bosses there. Out of all the things that I like about the game the most, other than the art design, is the stunningly beautiful soundtrack that the game has. This what made me fall in love with the game even more. Just listening to the soundtrack feels like an immersive feeling to explore the tons of places within the map, from the calming music within my home and the town of Domina, to the lush different places around the map. It's amazing how well the music of the game can be, that complements immensely on the environment of each stage, and even the boss's theme in the game, not to mention how emotional and uplifting some of the soundtracks can be. Kinda like how the Final Fantasy VI on the opera scene of the game, compared to some of the scenes such as these. I genuinely love the overall soundtracks within the game, and considered as one of my top video game music on the PS1. It's not surprising considering the composer is Yoko Shimomura herself, the same person who composed the soundtracks of the Kingdom Hearts series and the other notable games like Super Mario RPG and Street Fighter 2. That's why I give this game a rating of 8.4 out of 10. With the game's amazing overall art design along with its lovely soundtrack to listen on, Legend of Mana remains to be one of the unique action RPG games of its time. Not only does the game have a lot of unique features on the game mechanics, but how great the overall exploration and the replayability of the game can be. Although the game isn't that perfect, considering there were quite a few problems in between the experience I had playing the game, as well as the overall story and quests themselves are pretty much alright. It's nothing that spectacular, unfortunately, except for those major story arcs in the game. Those are actually quite decent. Now, would I recommend you on trying the game? I'd say 50-50. The whole lacking of a clear direction can be a problem, But if you're not bothered by that, then I highly suggest just try playing out the game. Although I suggest just have a guide with you just in case. Unless if you want to have the same problem as me, possibly, then go ahead. I'm still not yet sure with the HD Remastered though. Hopefully, I really hope they end up fixing the problems that I mentioned a while ago. If you're skeptical about it, I'll be doing a full review of it soon. I'm not sure when, but it's on one of my plans. For more videos such as these, why not head down to my channel to check things out? I do accurate game reviews of the past games, and some other new ones too. If you want to support my channel, a subscribe would be nice. It kinda helps me out morally, to be honest. This is K1PM, and I bid you farewell.